Welcome back. This is Daybreak, and thank you for staying with us. Let's begin with the push for constitutional amendment by a group of eminent Kenyans who are led by Professor PLO Lumumba, who say there's need for a re-examination of some aspects of the Kenyan constitution. And it comes 13 years since the promulgation of Katiba 2010, after years of a struggle to get one of the documents that across the world is admired because of its expressive nature and the freedoms that came with it, and also the vast array of institutions that are independent, created as a result of Constitution 2010. They issued a presser yesterday here in the county of Nairobi.
Is there a constitutional moment? Yes, there is a constitutional moment.
13 years since Kenya's 2010 Constitution was promulgated.
To all of us, as the fanfare is being played.
And as Kenyans celebrated the day, a group of professionals led by constitutional lawyer Professor PLO Lumumba say there's need for amendment to the Constitution to harmonize it with the present needs of the public. The team listed Parliament and the Executive, the structure of devolution, constitutional commissions, and aligning Kenya's constitution with regional countries for seamless integration as part of the amendments needed to deepen the spirit of constitutionalism in the country.
Our hand is to come out as we have, to tell Kenyans that we are telling you that there is a time and that there is an opportunity to re-examine the Constitution.
While appreciating initial attempts to amend the Constitution, including the opposition Code Coalitions or COA campaign in 2016, Punguza Mizigo by the Third Way Alliance Party, and the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020, the caucus hopes that the new attempt will bear fruits.
Initiative requires that you present a bill which will go through the processes prescribed by law. And I can tell you that we have a calendar of events. We will have a date for the launch of signature collection. We'll move around the country and collect signatures.
It is only in order, it is normal that constitutions are relooked into 10 years after. We have been grappling. Leaders have been talking about it. The issue has been who's going to bail the cat. And we are here on behalf of Kenyans to give it the oomph that is definitely needed to take us forth.
This will become the fourth attempt to amend the Constitution of Kenya in 13 years.
Good job.
Asanteni sana.
Thank you.
Ayub Abdikadir, Citizen TV. And we are joined by Jen Kagire, who is the woman MP representing Laikipia County. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Alongside that, of course, of Robert Mbui, the Kadhiani lawmaker, Senator John Medhu, Nyandarua County, and the Kacheliba lawmaker, Titus Lotea, with us in studio here to give us the account of the developments in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin with the latest, and this includes, and this is on the push for or an attempt to amend Katiba 2010. I first begin with you, Senator John Medhu. The argument yesterday fronted by PLO Lumumba and company was that time is ripe enough to tweak some aspects of our constitution. According to you, is the time ripe enough to change the constitution?
Well, I would want to say that this constitution that we have, like any other constitution, comes with its challenges. You know, it came with a new form and type of government, the devolved units. You know, it also brought in the aspect of independent institutions and many other institutions that were not there in the former constitution. So every time is constitutional moment, because that is what we do every day in our work as parliamentarians, is to try and strengthen the law as it is now. Yeah. And even the talks that are in Parliament, or the talks that are being led by the Kimani Ichung'wah and Kalonzo Musyoka, ultimately they will alter the way our constitution is now. Because if we are embedding the position of the Prime Minister, if we are introducing the position of the leader of opposition, those are not in our constitution as it is now. So this is a conversation that is ongoing. It shall be there, even as we do these changes now. In a short while, again, we'll see some weaknesses that will need to be strengthened. You know, the only thing that we must then be careful is not to depart so much and take back the gains that we've made with this constitution, because we all agree that with the shortfalls that it has.
Yeah.
It has been a very good constitution. Yeah. 13 years, the counties are running, they are up, and they're effective. There are issues that are there that need to be dealt with, especially when you're dealing with the issues. Right now, we are grappling with the question at the Senate of how do we deal with the relationship between governors and their deputies. Everywhere, every county, there are cries. How do we deal with the question of county assemblies versus governors? At least we are now introducing autonomy for the county assemblies. It's a bill that is now ripe, so that the county assemblies can be able to run their own budgets. They do not require to pass through the CC for finance, and they are putting oversight on the same person. So the constitution of Kenya will continue being strengthened until that time that we feel that we have the best laws. And that time shall never come, by the way. Because if that time ever comes, then Parliament will not be Parliament. It is the work of Parliament to make laws. It is the work of Parliament to strengthen laws. Okay.
Honorable Robert Moi, is the timing right?
Yeah, thank you, Ayub. I think, like my colleague has said, the Constitution is a living document. And so there's always things that come up, and that need to be addressed. In fact, you've just mentioned that there's been several attempts from Okoa Kenya, Punguza Mzigo. Last year we had BBI. So there's always an attempt to change the Constitution, because even when we passed this Constitution in 2010, I do remember very clearly that those that were involved in the process said that it's 80% good, there's only 20% which has issues, we can address those going forward. It's now 13 years. So I know there are two proponents. There are those who are saying that we can change the Constitution, and there are those who are saying, no, let's not change it now. I think it depends on the issues that are coming up, because if there are weighty issues that need to be addressed, then I think we may need to consider changing the Constitution in a few areas. I'll point out two first and foremost. One is that devolution was meant to share money between the national and the county governments. And if you look at the kind of functions that have been devolved to the counties, there are extremely many more than those that have remained at the national level. So how come the Constitution only asks that we devolve 15% of the money, yet we are devolving almost 70–80% of the functions? So it's something that we need to address. And having operated for the last 13 years under this Constitution, it's a right time to look at it and see whether the percentage share is fair. And then the other issue that I've been grappling with as a legislator for the last, since 2013, is one of the articles in the Constitution, Article 115, which deals with the presidential assent to any bill that is passed by Parliament. Now, it says that the Parliament may sign and assent to it, or refer it back to Parliament with reservations. Yes. Okay. So he can decide that I have reservations. But what we have noted, because since 2013, after the election of 2013, the president whoever was president, that was Uhuru Kenyatta, has constantly returned the bills with amendments. Ayub, there's a difference between reservations and amendments. Because reservations would be that I'm uncomfortable about 1, 2, or 3 issues. Okay. But what the president does, what has always been the practice, is that it comes back to Parliament as an amendment, saying remove clause this, or change this term, or it comes back completely as an amendment, and then we are told that Parliament has to raise 2/3 to be able to veto or to overturn the president's proposed amendment. Okay. That basically, I think, is a mistake in the constitutional provisions, because what it means is this, Ayub: the president can make all the laws of the Republic of Kenya. He can give the responsibility to Parliament, and when we pass a bill, he can go and change it before he signs it. And if you cannot raise 2/3, and I tell you it is a tall order to raise 2/3, then it means that that becomes law.
But then, Honorable Mbui, when you look at the architecture of our governance, there's a reason as to why Parliament has been placed there as a guardrail and a representative of the people. If the president, for example, sends back, that aspect you have mentioned with reservations or even amendments, then what's the point of Parliament's failure to raise 2/3 if, say, that issue is a public interest issue?
I think it's, let's be real, that, you see, we are dealing with real people. At the time of this legislation, someone could be in hospital, Somebody could have a child in hospital. Somebody could have traveled out of the country on business or whatever other purposes. I mean, there's many reasons. There's many reasons that can make people be unable to access Parliament at a time like that. And you know what? The two-thirds, my concern is that two-thirds is actually the threshold you require to change the Constitution. So why would we require the same two-thirds to be able to overturn the president's intent to make law in State House? So I think for me, some of those need to be relooked at. It's just an idea, it's a proposal that is mine, but I think in the long run, there are many other things that the Constitution has that need to be addressed. But I also want to say that one of my principles in the Azimio Coalition, the Her Excellency, the Honorable Martha Karua, did indicate that maybe this is not the right time.
Okay.
And I want to say she also has a valid point, only that I think when we get to those issues that require to be changed, we should change it. But she said that we have not fully implemented this Constitution. And it is a fact, because if you go to the Constitution and Article 239 on the national state organs, it is very clear. It says that in performing their functions, they must not be partisan. They must not act to further the interest of any political side. But what has happened since this Constitution came into effect? Every single 5-year period, whoever is holding the reins of power becomes the one that calls the tune, and the National Police Service and all these state organs dance to that tune. And the Constitution doesn't envision that kind of situation. Okay,
Honorable, we'll talk about the vast array of institutions that were born out of Katiba and the culture of constitutionalism, because the past 13 years have seen an avalanche of consistent attacks on the Constitution, and this coming from all fronts of the political establishment. Honorable Jen Kagiri, what's your takeaway over the past 13 years of where we were and where we are at the moment, ever since we promulgated the document that we have at the moment?
Thank you, Ayub. For me, I would say we've made very many great strides since the promulgation of the new Constitution. First, of course, I would want to appreciate the seat that I hold was as a result of the creation of this Constitution, and we've had many benefits from it. If we look at the prior to this Constitution, what was there and what is currently there, of course, there's a lot of development based on devolution. That is a very big benefit to the country, because now the resources of the government are now trickling down to the last man at the lowest level of the community. Again, we must talk of also judicial independence. We've seen situations where the judiciary is not able to make rulings even against the government that is sitting. And that tells us this is a judiciary that now is able to make rulings and judgments based on what they think is right or wrong, and not based on what influence they would get from the government. Of course, the gender issue is a great benefit from this Constitution, considering that back then we would watch and see a cabinet that comprises only of men, and it was the norm in this country. Today, if that happened, it is illegal, it is unconstitutional, and that is, again, thanks to this Constitution that we have. Looking at a situation of where I come from, like Laikipia County, today we have community land rights, which was unheard of before this Constitution. So there is so much that has happened from this Constitution, and we look forward to even greater progress. Of course, there is transparency. We have institutions like the EACC that were created because of this Constitution. The country can now look forward to progress and accountability based on institutions like this. There is so much progress that has been made from this Constitution, but I would also support what my colleagues are saying. It's a time for us to look back and ask, are we where we wanted to be? Have we achieved what we wanted to achieve? Because, of course, on matters devolution, as much as my colleague is talking of resources being increased to the devolution levels, I would also have a question of, did we give them functions that are bigger than what they can hold? Sometimes I look at the technical institutions in our counties. Are they performing as well as they should? The health facilities, are they performing as well as they should? Maybe were the counties given functions that were bigger than them? Again, we look at independent commissions. Are they performing to the best that we expected them to do? So again, those are issues we need to look at. Of course, Chapter 6 till today has never been honored. These are other issues we need to look into in this Constitution.
When you talk about the exchequer release of funds to the counties, and you said the functions outweigh the money that comes from the center, but of what was allocated according to you, was there a prudent use of the resources from the exchequer that were released to the counties?
Ayub, that's something else we have to look at. On the amount of resources that have been released to the county since the promulgation of the Constitution and the equivalent output of that amount of money, is it what we'd have expected? So that's what I'm saying. Are the functions sent out to the counties, if it's our health facilities, the amount of money being released to them, is it equating to what we see in the counties? When a mother calls me and tells me she's, for her to be allowed to deliver in a hospital, she's supposed to buy her own gloves, buy cotton wool. Those are things that we need to question and ask. What about the resources that are going down to these counties?
Okay. Honorable Lote.
Good morning.
Is the time right?
Well, the time has been right from the first day we promulgated our constitution. I think looking to what is going on today, I think it is time that we review our constitution. Mm-hmm. And I want to center on one major aspect, which I think is being overtaken, is about to be overtaken by offense. Mm-hmm. The constitution was promulgated in 2010, but it started taking effect in 2013 mm-hmm. when President Uhuru Kenyatta took charge. And that basically means from 2013 to now, we've got 10 years of implementing this constitution. Mm-hmm. If we look at, for example, Article 89 of the constitution, it is very clear in terms of the work of the IEBC. The IEBC is supposed to review boundaries between a period of 8 to 12 years. Mm-hmm. And that is a constitutional writing, that our boundaries are supposed to be reviewed. Already we are past 8 years, and we are approaching the 12 years. And yet there is nothing that seems to be very serious for us to review our constitution so that we can allow for the creation of boundaries to be reviewed. Because the constitution itself has specified our boundaries now, our constituencies to 290. Mm-hmm. And yet for us to review, it basically means that we'll have to review that part of the constitution that clocks our constituencies to 290 so that we can open it up and allow IEBC to be able now to review our boundaries. Okay. There is nothing that is taking place. It basically means that by the time we're going to the next election, mm-hmm. we will not have reviewed our boundaries, and we will be very unconstitutional. And so for us to be able to become constitutional, we need to review our constitution in many fronts. My colleagues have spoken about the legislature, they have spoken about the executive, they have spoken about the function of the executive. All those are not supposed to be reviewed. And that's why there was a popular initiative that was called BBI sometimes. And if you look at the 9 points of the BBI, some of it wanted to address some of the issues. The 20% that my colleague said mm-hmm. was said to be bad. And those issues are still lingering because so far nothing has happened in terms of changing the constitution. And the reason why these people are now going out to collect signatures mm-hmm. is as per the Article 257 of the Constitution, which says that the people
must be involved.
Yes, must be involved.
Okay.
And so for me, mm-hmm. if we do not take quick action now to review our Constitution, by the time we are going to the 2027 election, our boundaries will still be 290, and yet we will be very unconstitutional because we will have been past 12 years of reviewing our boundaries. So first, we need to review the Constitution so that IBC can move forward to review our boundaries.
All right.
So it is time for us to review our Constitution.
Okay. You mentioned one of the attempts to re-examine our Constitution in 2020, the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill. That was the Building Bridges Initiative. And the High Court, the Appellate Court, and the Apex Court have never had nice words for the drivers of that initiative for what they termed as a deliberate overlook of the Kenyan people in not involving them as to what ought to have happened. I mean, in this manner, this is a constitutional framework or a framework that has ring-fenced itself from the encroachment by the political establishment, that you have to follow the due process before you tweak it to your needs. Then how will you, the members of the political establishment going forward, learn from the judgments which were deep by the justice system in the country as to when you want to amend it and follow the due process as required by the very same constitution?
Well, thank you. I think the popular initiative, the BBI, was given very harsh words because it really ignored the people. But if you look at the sentencing, the writing of the judgments, it never talked much about the content of the BBI. It talked about the process of the BBI. And that was the wrong process because it was politicized. Everything was taken through a political angle between the handshake brothers, the people who wanted to ensure that they bring their subject agenda to the fore. They forgot the people. And I think the reason why, if you see the Lumumba team yesterday, they wanted to collect signatures. Article 257 was totally ignored during the BBI. And I think we need to follow Article 257 for us to be able to have a constitutional review. So for me, I don't think the judgment was wrong on what was the content of the BBI, but more specifically, the judgment was wrong on the process. And I think we will always need to respect the people because this constitution is centered on the people. Article 1 says this constitution is for the people, and the people are the ones who are supposed to review it.
All right, and all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya. Senator Medho, coming to you. In the last 13 years, we have had this constitution. Was there a culture of constitutionalism?
Well, I would want to say, and please allow me to make a rejoinder of a question that you asked to my sister Jane on the prudent use of resources that have been driven to the counties. Besides chairing the Committee on Water of the Senate, I also sit in the Public Accounts Committee. And I would want to say that the counties have really grown in terms of their accountability and in terms of the way they carry their expenditure on resources. And, of course, the reason why counties are really demonized is because their way of accounting is very transparent. For many years, maybe like the first 3 years, none of the counties ever got an unqualified opinion from the Auditor General because nobody knew what is expected of them, what they are supposed to do, the tools of trade that they are supposed to employ when they are doing their audit. But now, and you also even know that some of the counties that are appearing before the Public Accounts Committee now, they have never even appeared. Every time they would want to, to run away from coming to answer questions because they always found it a way, they always found it easier to run away than to come and answer questions. But now, since I started, or since this Public Accounts Committee, none of the counties have been invited and they have failed to turn up. This morning we are looking at the books of the County Assembly of Nakuru. And we are now moving from issues to do with how did you use this money manually? How did you be able to follow the trail of the usage of the money? Because most of the counties are now employing IFMIs. In fact, I think 90-something% of all the counties. Number two, again, I'm not really persuaded by the assertion by my brother Lotte, and I've never been a proponent of boundary review. I come from a very big constituency myself. My constituency is called Kinangop. It has 117,000 voters now. But that time that we shall allow and open that Pandora's box, we shall have every village becoming a constituency because everybody shall have their own argument. I would say that Kinangop has 117,000 people. Then it should be split to 2. Then the senator from Marsabit will say that Marsabit is 20% of the whole republic. So it should be divided to 4 or 5 counties. So this is a conversation that will be difficult and it will come with its own share of challenges. But ultimately we shall get there. It's a responsibility that has been given by ABC. We shall go there and we shall give our opinions. All right. Then finally,
to a question.
On the question of constitutionalism, this constitution itself is, has been self-healing. It has given its own framework of implementation on every aspect, be it the judiciary, be it the executive, be it the legislature, parliament itself. How we are supposed to carry our own business, how we are supposed to deal with our own issues. My brother Honorable Mbui has indicated that there has always been constant reproach by the executive, both to the legislature and to the judiciary. But as it is now, the constitution is not deficient on how we are supposed to deal with all these issues that come with we trying not to be following the constitution. You have just mentioned that the popular initiative, Parliament had given its nod. The executive was the one that was leading. But the constitution itself, in its own self-healing, gave the judiciary the powers to stop the politicians on their track and put the ball back again to Wanjiku. So, in my opinion, I think the constitution as it is now has never been had any deficiency in its own implementation. Yeah.
Because why I mentioned that is I'm looking at the ruling by the Court of Appeal, which was rendered in the year 2020. That was in the aftermath of the High Court nullification of the amendment bill, which it termed as unconstitutional, null and void. And Daniel Musinga, the president of the court at the time, had said that the Constitution of Kenya is transformative, is not in dispute, but its implementation is the trouble. That is his exact wording, the transcription of the judgment that he delivered, along the other judges, of course, who I'll be citing here. I mean, what then will be the implementation matrix of what you have touted as a constitution that is elaborate, that is transformative, that is self-sufficient in some aspects, ring-fencing itself from an encroachment? I mean, what will be the degree of implementation matrix here?
Now, I'll say this, because the constitution came with some changes that some people, felt, initially that they are not ready to. And I will give an example. Mm-hmm. Just the other week, we were at the devolution conference, and 13 years down the line, there are functions that have been devolved according to the fourth schedule, but the national government is still holding on to them. They have not been fully transferred. Over the years, the Constitution has said that the monies that are owed to the counties, they are supposed to be limited to the counties every 15th of every month. The Constitution is very clear on what is supposed to happen, but it has never happened. But over time, these things, their implementation, you don't implement them this year, but over time you are forced to implement them. Mm-hmm. That time that we were at the devolution conference, the president committed that we shall have to transfer all the functions. It's not that he's being asked to transfer. It's not that he's doing any favor to the counties. Just now we are saying that counties are getting their money in time. It is not an alien formation, my brother Ayu. It is something that is in the Constitution. So what I'm saying is, even as the citation of implementation is there,
yes,
over time, implementation catches up with all of us. Just now, in the bipartisan talks, we are speaking about the 2/3 that has been proposed for the National Assembly, that has been there in the Constitution. For 13 years, it has not been implemented, but it's a convention that is now alive, and ultimately we shall get there.
Senator Medu, before I'll come to Honorable Boy, the release of the money from the Exchequer, you have talked about the current Kenya Kwanza administration. Fine. If there is a clear constitutional requirement and a dictate by the Constitution, isn't it then not the problem of the political class in not following the constitutional provisions, and as to why we had the late disbursement of funds, for example, in the past government to the counties? Is this problem not purely political, where you members of the political class subscribe to?
Maybe not necessarily. And I would want to say this. For years, and my colleagues are here from the National Assembly, for years there have been a tussle between the Senate and the National Assembly, who is supposed to do what, who is supposed to do what. But over time, we are almost now coming into agreement. This is what this a preserve of the Senate, this is a preserve of the National Assembly, this is what we are supposed to do together. Just the same way, initially, some people are not sure what is this devolution, how are we supposed to treat it. It was a new phenomenon. But over time, then we have come to appreciate, just as my colleagues have said, we have come to appreciate that devolution is a working tool of the government. So ultimately, and even in the subsequent governments, you see the enhancement of even the funds. Now we are at timely release of the funds, but we shall even get to a place that we shall then start speaking to a question that has been asked by my brother Mbui. I'm happy at the devolution conference. We were now speaking about whether the sharing should be based on the audited accounts or on the budget itself. So that conversion, we are now talking of 385 billion. At some point, we shall be speaking about taking it to even a bigger percentage.
$500 billion, briefly before you go to break, Honorable Mbui.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to reiterate that I think, like my colleagues have all said, yes, we do need to change the Constitution. And yes, there is a problem of implementation because just recently, and this I just thought is something I should point out, the issue of the 2/3 gender rule. I think when it comes to elective office, it's one of the most difficult things to implement. We have attempted, I think, twice. since 2013 to come up with laws that will be able to implement the two-third gender rule. And every time we attempt that, we realize that it requires that we increase the number, seriously, so that we can be able to accommodate any of the genders that is not maybe getting elected into office. I think maybe we need to relook at that. And I have nothing against a two-third gender in any office. But when it comes to elective office, it's also very difficult, because for you to come and say that this particular constituency can only be, you can only elect a man to be a member of parliament, I think it's going to be difficult. But on the part of implementation, we had a government that did not achieve the two-third gender rule in the issue of the cabinet for almost, I think, 5 years. Again, we have right now, I think, the CS that is responsible for matters gender has come up with a proposal, a task force that is supposed to be able to deal with the implementation of the two-third gender rule, and has a lot of members that have been appointed to that task force. And I think there's only one man and over 10 women. So already that totally goes against the constitution as it is right now. I think one of the big problems is, even as we look at what we want to change, let us implement this constitution, completely, so that we can be able to say these are now the gray areas.
Okay, when we get back from the break, Honorable Jen Kagire and Honorable Titus Lote will continue with this topic and then shift our attention to what's ongoing at the Bomas of Kenya and the Senate that is set to reconvene a special sitting to deliberate on what was adopted by the National Assembly. And the byline is that there's no sidestepping this Constitution of Kenya 2010 without consequences. This is Daybreak. More after the break. Stay tuned.